It's the Indiana Geeking Podcast with our very special guest, Gregg Nowling. Yay!
Catatonic, couldn't speak when they found me. Distress call answered, 7 planets with nothing left but debris. Right out of hell I saw it, 400 voices suddenly screaming. Adrift and damaged, a starship floating.
All right, my friends, we are back with the Indiana Geeking Podcast with another episode. And this week we have got a really cool builder and craftsman here in Indianapolis. So, Gregg, go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know what you do.
Hi, Tony. I'm Gregg Nowling. Professionally, I am a real estate broker with Ferris Property Group and FC Tucker. And semi-professionally, I build movie prop replicas. I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and I do a little costuming too, but not so much anymore. But mostly I specialize in replicating movie props to the nth degree.
And I know that's actually how we met. It was on the Replica Prop Forum back in the late 90s.
Yeah.
That's how we first started talking. I mean, you knew my parents before then through Scouts, but
And the odd thing is, I was living in Nebraska and you lived here, and we still figured out that we knew each other. So
it's because it's a small world.
it is. I mean,
We can't sing it because I'm not going to pay the licensing rights.
right. But, when we were starting this, 20 years ago, there were 150 of us, and, maybe. And, now there's thousands of people doing this, thanks to Facebook and the internet just keeps getting bigger. But yeah, it was a very small group.
Mm-hmm. It was really kind of cool. Kind of miss those smaller days, even though I don't miss the freeze framing VHS tapes to try to find seam lines.
Oh my God, no! Yeah, I went through probably 3 copies of Back to the Future trying to freeze frame scenes of that comic book to draw that when I was a kid.
This is a good segue into the first question. You like the professionalism there?
That's good. I like that.
So how did you get started in prop replicating and costuming and stuff like that?
A couple of things happened, and it was kind of fits and starts. So the first movie prop I ever made was from a movie called The Manhattan Project, and in the movie, the kid breaks into a nuclear facility, steals some plutonium, and he does that by faking the plutonium by putting Prel and glitter into Prel's a green shampoo, for those of you who don't remember the 80s, into a bottle and replacing it with the plutonium, which looked exactly the same. And I thought, I've seen that bottle before, and I can go buy a can of Prel or a jar or a bottle of Prel, and I know where some glitter is. And that was the first movie prop I ever made. And then a few years later, I was I was watching Back to the Future and decided that I really wanted to own the comic book. And so I just sat there and I kept drawing and drawing and drawing the comic book, and I would burn out tapes in that area till it was you couldn't make it out. But really what I got my start professionally was about the time you and I met. And I had just gone to a Star Trek convention, I guess. And somebody was dressed as Darth Vader. First time I had ever seen anybody in a Stormtrooper costume or Darth Vader. Like, this is, it wasn't, there was no 501st back then. There was no guys making vacuum form copies. If anybody was doing this, they were doing one-offs. And so this guy had done this Darth Vader costume and this Stormtrooper costume, and I got this idea that I could do R2-D2. And I started making an R2-D2, and somebody saw what I was doing and asked me to build one for them. And I said, yeah, but I would have to charge you. And they're like, yeah, that's totally cool. And I'm like, okay. And there you go.
And that's how you got the nickname, which you still use on Twitter, Droid Boy.
Yeah, although it's funny because like at the time I was the only Droid Boy, and now that I don't know, somebody cyber squatted my Droid Boy website and took that, and so it's fine. I don't use it a whole lot anymore because my prop catalog has definitely outgrown just building R2-D2s, but yeah, still use it a little bit. My Facebook page is still facebook.com/droidboy, I think.
But now you're doing a lot of stuff under Dover Props and Models, correct?
Yeah. So Dover Props and Models came about because I kind of wanted a more professional look, and I had to come up with a name, and it was really a play off of the movie MASH. There's a scene where Hawkeye and Trapper go to Tokyo, and they show up with their golf clubs, walk into the hospital, and say, "Hey, we're the pros from Dover." So I decided Dover Props and Models, so my tagline could say "the pros from Dover."
Oh. Now, is that the movie or the TV series?
The movie.
Okay.
The movie.
It has been such a long time. I think I watched the movie when I was younger and tried comparing it with the TV series, and my, early teen brain didn't make any connections. So
yeah, they're two very separate things. I mean, they're similar, but they're different.
you've you started out with Star Wars and all that, and I know you've built a lot of stuff over the years. I mean, we could fill 45 minutes just talking about all the different things you've worked on, but I really want to focus on a few things. First off, what's your favorite film or TV series to replicate pieces from? Do you have a certain one, or
I think honestly, the honest answer is my favorite is whatever I'm currently doing, because I am
This is fair.
so OCD and I just get totally obsessed, and I'll watch the movie 300 times and that becomes my favorite thing of all time. But I would say probably the most stuff that I've honestly done props from is Star Trek, the original series especially, just because it lends to being made, and there's a lot of reference out there, and it's just fun.
And I know one thing we were talking about before we started recording was you have actually made Star Trek pieces for people who have been on the show.
Yeah, Deborah, I'm not sure what last name she goes by, so I'm not going to throw that out there because she has a professional name, but I guess it was Deborah Downey is the name that she used on the show. Deborah Downey was in the episode Way to Eden, and she was the hippie girl playing the bicycle wheel when she was jamming with Spock. And several years ago, her and I became friends, and she found out I was a prop builder, and she's like, oh, I'd love one day to have a replica of the wheel. And so I made 3 of those. And she has one, I have one, and then I want to say Jim Crawley's Star Trek group, the whatever it is, I don't know, the one that replicates the episodes, I know there's a couple of them, has one, and they have one of my Vulcan harps too. So
cool.
To my knowledge, I am probably the only person on the planet who has ever replicated that or ever will.
Now, some other items you've done replication work. I know you have built a full-size TARDIS from Doctor Who. Yep. You have it on display at a local school right now.
I do. It's in their school library. Yeah.
Now, there's an interesting story behind the building of the TARDIS. Like, didn't you got a grant to study the old police boxes?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken. You want to...
So I do a lot of things, and one of my jobs is I'm a high school librarian, and every year Eli Lilly gives out $110,000 grants. It's now 12, but at the time it was $10,000 grants for teachers to do something to rejuvenate themselves with, because we get burnt out. And I wrote a grant to travel around Scotland and England documenting the 12 remaining TARDIS-style police boxes and come back and build one. And that's what I did. My wife and I traveled around Scotland and England for 2 weeks and saw every existing TARDIS-style police box that literally from one end of the country to the other, and blueprinted each and every one, made exact measurements, and I came back and I took those measurements and put them all together, and ultimately ended up not using any of the measurements because I was able to get measurements off of Peter Capaldi's TARDIS, and so I built an exact replica of Capaldi's TARDIS.
And you're also working on a console.
Yeah. So one of the things while we were over there we got to do was go to the Doctor Who experience in Cardiff. And they had on display the first Doctor's console from the BBC movie An Adventure in Space and Time. And I just fell in love with it. And so I had some extra wood left over and started building that. And it's in storage right now because I don't have a place to work on it. And it's like a 7-foot across top. So it takes up a lot of space. But I'll get to it one day.
When you get the workspace back to where you can put a 7-foot piece and be able to work around it and all that.
Yeah, so. and I also built 3 Daleks, full-size Daleks, in the meantime.
And you've built, I know one of them was an Ironside.
Yep.
Because that's on display by the Tardis.
Yeah, my personal Dalek. The other two ended up getting sold. It started off, one was for a client who wanted me to build one, and then I'm like, well, if I'm going to build one, I'm going to build 2 or 3 at the same time, and because then the process, it doesn't always take as much time to build multiples, and then I get to give my client the best version, and so then so the first one went to the client, the Ironside stayed with me, and then the other one I ended up selling to a local Doctor Who store, and they're going to actually finish it because it didn't get 100% finished.
Okay, the one down in Canby?
Yeah, Who North America.
Okay.
Don't know if I'm allowed to plug them, but they're good people.
They're friends of mine. I'm going to be there Saturday for Doctoberfest.
There you go. So Who North America, go buy Doctor Who stuff from them because they're good people.
Yeah, no, they are friends of the blog. More than happy to give them a free plug as long as you're happy with it. So, because right now this is about you, Greg. So, another interesting thing you've done, you have a history of all things with the bicycle from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
I do.
So you want to go ahead, let us know, because I know not only do you have a replica of the bike, you've also done work on some of the screen use pieces.
I have. So several years, well, I guess about 5 years ago. I don't know if that's several, but about 5 years ago, I taught my son how to ride a bike. And to celebrate riding a bike, I'm like, dude, you've got to watch this movie. And so I made him watch Pee-wee's Big Adventure, and like we're watching, he's like, why don't we have this bike? And I'm like, that's a really good question. So I started doing some research into it, and I bought the frame. I bought a 1946 Schwinn DX frame, and I figured, if I only get so far into this, I'll have a really cool bicycle. And as I started doing research, I found a screen used one at a museum in Ohio, and I contacted them, and I'm like, can I come over and document it and stuff? And as we're looking at it, we're realizing that it was missing a lot of parts. And so I was working with 2 guys, one in California and one in Kansas, and we were kind of pooling our resources and knowledge bases, and I was doing all the fabricating, and another guy was doing design work, and then another guy was just kind of helping out where he could. And we all agreed that we would fund the restoration of this bike. And so we went through and we fixed everything that was broken on it. We made some parts more accurate that weren't screen used, that had been put on there. And we replaced parts that were missing totally. So now they have a 100% complete bike. And in the process, we were able to take measurements off of pieces. And so I used that for the bike that I ended up building. And then I had access to another screen used bike. A friend of mine was able to buy a screen used one that was missing a lot of pieces. And actually, it wasn't that it was missing a lot of pieces. It was in a lot of pieces. So we had to go through. And I flew out to where he lived, and I spent a week with him fixing things and restoring it and putting it all back together. And in exchange for doing that, I was able to take molds off of his saddlebags. So the saddlebags on my Pee-wee bike are screen accurate because they're cast off the real thing. And then another guy that I know was able to buy so there were 14 screen used bikes. And he was able to get a hold of one. And so I helped him, provided parts for him. But so of the 14 of them, I've physically seen 4 of them. I know where 6 of them are. So.
And you've had your hand in at least 3 of them?
Yeah.
On getting them restored?
Yeah. So.
And then you have your own copy, too?
And now I have my own copy.
Along with the gray suit and the bow tie.
Yeah, it's you asked one of the first questions you asked me was what was my favorite movie, and when I was doing Pee-wee's Big Adventure, I watched it constantly, just obsessively. And if you had asked me that day what my favorite movie was, it would have been Pee-wee's Big Adventure. But
well, like you said, you focus on whatever you're working on at the time,
right?
So, Now, you've done a lot of this for a lot of years, and I know you started out, with the, like you said, drawing comic books based on pausing the video cassette. I know you've moved on ahead, to molding and casting and sculpting. Now you're even working with 3D printed materials.
Right.
So you've done a lot of work in the prop replication over the years, and I know you're still working with woods and resins and fiberglass. You've got a B9 in the other room that's half done right now, and actually more than half.
That's probably 3/4.
Yeah.
And my Last Starfighter video game cabinet in the workshop.
So with all this work, this can be really intimidating to someone just starting out. Do you have any tips for someone that's looking to get into prop replication, things like that, on how to get started?
Yeah, I mean, as corny as it sounds, just do it. I mean, I started out mixing shampoo and glitter together to come up with a prop, and I was perfectly happy with that. Like, that was awesome when I was, 11 years old, and it would have been awesome today. And I have seriously thought about trying to track down that container again just so I can recreate that prop. Props don't have to be difficult, If you've watched The Matrix and the scene where Morpheus gives Neo a choice between the red pill or the blue pill, dude, it's NyQuil or DayQuil. It doesn't always have to be difficult. My skill set has grown exponentially in the 20 plus years I've been doing this. But I still look at people, like my friend Jason Eaton, who's one of the great model builders in the universe. And I feel like an idiot next to him. Just the quality of stuff he does. But then he'll remind me, that I'm actually good. So just do it and find a medium that you're comfortable with, and find a project that excites you, because if you're not excited about it, it's never going to turn out well. And just know that whatever you do next will be better than what you did last. It's not difficult to do it. It's difficult to get better at it, but I'm not good at painting. Painting is my weakness. I haven't gotten better at painting because I don't spend much effort doing it, because I don't like doing it, and because I don't like doing it because I'm not good at it. And I'm not good at it because I don't like doing it. It's this vicious circle. Whereas if I actually put some effort into it, I probably would get a little better at it.
All right. Now, speaking of things that you start out that you're excited about, this is a segue, which would be better if I didn't call it out as a segue.
No, I think it's nice to define things. Like, that's a cat, a four-legged animal. That's also called a feline. Yeah,
that's a doe, a deer, a female deer.
Yeah.
So I know you've also recently started a charity.
I have.
Signing Away Hunger. Do you want to go ahead? Let's go ahead and start out. Tell us exactly what Signing Away Hunger is.
So Signing Away Hunger is a not-for-profit that we started. I mean, we're not a 501c3 yet, just because that's very expensive, and we're working towards that. Signing Away Hunger is a not-for-profit that we started last March, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was last March, or this year, March. We were at a convention, and I was talking to an actress who, whose name is totally escaping me right now, from Once Upon a Time. And I was telling her that I work in an inner city school. Oh, we were talking about travel. And she was saying that she wanted to take her kids to India, but it's so poor that she's afraid that it will kind of traumatize them. And I'm like, you don't have to go to India to see poor. I've got kids that are homeless, that have lived in their cars, that, the only times that they get to eat are at school because we provide 2 meals a day to them. And she's like, wow, take a couple of signed autographs and, auction them off or something and have a pizza party. And I turned her down, and I said, I don't want to take them not having a plan, because I don't want to just take them. I'm a huge autograph collector. I've been collecting autographs literally my entire life. And I mean, when I say literally, I mean from the time I was 4 years old, I remember my parents bringing me home an autograph from a function that they went to, and I was hooked. But I didn't want to just take it so I could have an autograph and not do anything with it. And I just laid in bed all night thinking about what could I do. And I decided in the middle of the night I was going to start a foundation to help provide money to the food pantry at our high school. And the next day I went and told her, I'm going to take you up on your offer. And that's how Signing Away Hunger started. And, you know, it's not significant, but so far we've raised about $600. And we've got an auction starting today, whatever today is, Tuesday, the 24th, I think, that will run until the 30th. That's going to be all horror-related stuff. So we have some stuff signed like Skeet Ulrich from who was the Scream guy in Scream, and Matthew Lillard as Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, and I don't know. We just have a bunch of stuff. We have some old Creature from the Black Lagoon autographs. So, you know, we try to keep them topical and thematic. We've done science fiction ones. We've done pop culture ones. And we've got, you know, several more auctions coming up. One thing we're going to do at Starbase Indy, which is a local science fiction convention that happens Thanksgiving weekend here in Indianapolis, we're going to set up, and we've been generously given a bunch of autographs, and we're going to allow people to spin a wheel to win an autograph. And everybody's going to be guaranteed a winner, and all of that money will go back to the food pantry. So,
and that's definitely, as I was telling you before we started recording, that's definitely something I'm going to make sure I have $10 for, because I'm going to definitely be at Starbase.
Yeah, and there's cool autographs too, and it's not like they're just junk autographs. Like, you know, we were able to get a bunch of autographs of Greg Grunberg, who has done everything J.J. Abrams. And, you know, if you go to a convention and get him, he's $40 or $50, and you'll have a 1 in 10 chance or so of winning his autograph for $10. So, I mean, granted, there's probably somebody in there, like, you know, that you don't want, or, but, you know, whatever. Still, even if you don't get what you want, it's, you know, you're getting an autograph and money's going to charity. And I also want to say that one thing that we were really cognizant about with when we started this, and why we started this, was that there are so many organizations out there asking for your money. And we wanted to give people something in return for that. We wanted to sell them a product, and that proceeds happen to go to a charity. So the nice thing is, like, you know, unless we're doing some sort of a raffle where you have a chance to win something, which we did at Indie PopCon, you know, like, whenever you're buying something, you're buying something. You know, you get something out of it. So,
and that's really cool. And also, what's cool is the Halloween auction will still be going on. This episode will be up on Friday the 27th.
Yay!
So if you're listening to this before the 30th, if you're listening to this when the episode drops, get over to the blog post attached to this episode, follow those links, check out the eBay auction.
Yes,
because I will link to the auctions in the show notes of this episode.
Groovy, thank you.
To make sure that gets out there. Not sure if it's going to get into bum bid there or not, but hey.
You know, even if one person sees it and one person decides they want something, that's, you know, well, that'll be good. Because, you know, I've meant to try to find a statistic on this, but, you know, like, $10 is a meal, man. You know, like, so if we can provide even just one meal for, you know, one family, because, you know, it's one thing to say that, you know, kids get a free lunch or a free breakfast at school, but then they go home and there's nothing. Mm-hmm. You know, and the food pantries, you know, that we support, that money goes to buy food for them to be able to take home and provide for their parents or their siblings, or, you know, maybe their grandparents. And it's just it's a crazy screwed up world. And as somebody that, I don't have to worry about where my food comes from. Not that my life has always been that way, because there have been points in my life where I wasn't really sure how I was going to feed myself that week. You can't expect kids to do well in school if they come to school hungry or stressed out about how they're going to get fed later in the day.
Exactly. So it's really, really cool.
Thank you.
So as we start going ahead and wrapping this up, bringing this home, because you went ahead and just answered all the questions about sighing away hunger.
I've done this once or twice.
Yes. What the goal is, what your future plans are, stuff like that. You just very smooth, very nice.
I will say, though, the hard part about interviewing me is that I don't give good sound bites. Like, I used to be a director and a producer for NBC, and you look for those 10-second, 5-second sound bites, and I tell stories. Sorry.
Oh, it's adorable that you think I'm good enough with marketing this that I can put sound bites out there.
I have faith in you, Tony.
I'm glad somebody does. Not just my mom.
Somebody's got to. And your mom's awesome.
So, as we're wrapping up, there's a question I ask of every one of my guests. Being geeking in Indiana, what I always like to ask people is, what do you really like about being a geek in Indiana?
I think that for me, the best part is, this is going to sound stupid and probably not anything that anybody's ever thought of. I stay in Indiana because of the cost of living. It's cheap to live here. You've lived in California.
Oh, yeah.
You know how expensive it is to live. I would love to live in Southern California where all the prop builders are. But if I was there, I wouldn't have money to build anything. I've moved around. I've lived different places, and I've been back in Indianapolis for 17 years now. And I've developed this great relationship with a lot of people. Like, I have a machine shop that does laser cutting I can't do in my own shop. I have a CNC shop that does stuff for me. I have welders I have a fiberglass shop. And like, there are businesses out there that will love working with me as a prop builder because it's something different than what they do normally. And I think if I lived anywhere else, I wouldn't have that. And, combined with just being able to afford to build props, to me, it's as good a place as any to be. And if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes, it'll change.
Ha, ha, ha. So anyway, moving on. So, Gregg, why don't you go ahead and let us know, where can we find you online? Like I said, I know we're going to have a link to the eBay auctions up so people will be able to see where they can support Sighing Away Hunger there. But, your realty work, your prop work, things like that, where can folks find you?
I'm most of my social media presence is on Facebook. I am also on Instagram at I think it's Instagram is Gregg with 2 G's, Gregg .Nowling, Nowling. My Facebook page is either Facebook at DroidBoy or Facebook at Gregg Nowling Realtor.com. One of the two. I'm not really sure. I think it's Realtor.
I follow both. I'll put links in.
Or Dover Props and Models. Although I don't put as much there, but if you want to follow me, Instagram probably has the best pictures because I take photos of everything. My props I'm building, my home remodeling, my travel, my dog. So
the dog's cute.
Thanks. She's my baby. I love her.
So, but Gregg, thank you very much for sitting with me for a little bit, inviting me into your home. You got a lot of cool stuff. If you don't mind, I'm going to grab some pictures of some stuff you'd like to show off that I'll put in a photo slideshow attached to the episode as well.
Yeah, you'll have to come out to the workshop and so I can show you the last Starfighter cabinet. So I want to talk about that for 1 second.
Oh, sure. Go right ahead.
It's
man.
We talk about, falling in love or being obsessed with things. And so I had this hair up my butt to build the last Starfighter cabinet. And I figured out how to do it. Like, I started obsessing about it. And so a couple weeks ago, I spent a week and built it. I still have to paint it, but it's an exact replica of the video game cabinet. And when it's done, it'll play the video game that was essentially the same video game that was in the movie. And so I'm super stoked about that.
Didn't somebody in the RPF put up an open source?
Yeah, Rogue Synapse.
Okay.
EVII. He created a video game of it, and I haven't actually played it yet, but apparently it plays beautifully, and so this cabinet will play that, and it'll look just like the one in the movie and play like the one in the movie. And so that's the cool thing about building props, is that you get to revisit your childhood and just be a kid again.
Yeah, I know that's why I got into them, is all this stuff I saw as a kid that I always really loved, that, lightsabers instead were just cardboard tubes.
Right.
Now I can make or buy a lightsaber.
Right. It's a phenomenal hobby.
So, but once again, Gregg, thank you very much. Everybody, go ahead, stick around for the outro and the closing, the Patreon shout outs, and we'll catch you in a couple of weeks. Thanks again, Gregg.
You're welcome.
I'd like to thank everybody for listening to this episode of the Indiana Geeking Podcast. You can find the blog post for this episode, as well as information like Hoosier convention listings, past podcast episodes, and more at indianageeking.com. If you like what I'm doing, there are ways you can help. First, you can make sure you subscribe through Apple Podcasts, Google Music, Stitcher, or whatever your preferred podcatcher is. Also, if your method allows it, I'd love it if you left me a rating and a review. Good or bad, it lets me know how I'm doing. If you'd like to help financially, you can check out the Support Geeking in Indiana link posted at the side of the blog, where you can learn about how to support geeking by shopping through Amazon, making a one-time donation, making a monthly donation through Patreon, or even buying Indiana Geeking merchandise through the shop or my merch links. Before we go, I'd like to give a huge thanks to my $5 and above patrons for supporting the blog and podcasts. One of their perks is a shout out on the cast, and I'm more than happy to give love to Becca, Claire, Kayla, Mal, Michael, Spencer, Tommy, and Tyler for their support. Last but not least, I want to give a huge thanks to the local band's 5-year mission and the Shakeups for the music used in this episode. You can find track info on the blog post and find out more about the bands at 5yearmission.net and theshakeups.net accordingly. Thank you all for listening and for your support. I'll see you next time, and always remember, live long and prosper, may the force be with you, and as always, be excellent to each other.